So now, let's define zeros. So zeros are the values of x which makes the functions equals to 0. So in here, you need to take a look at the numerator of the rational function. So the real numbered zeros are the x-intercept of the functions. So these real numbered zeros are also our x-intercepts again. So here are the steps to find the zeros of a rational function. So first, we need to identify the restrictions of the rational function f. So what is this restriction? So the restrictions are the values that will make your function to be undefined. So meaning your denominator will be is equals to 0. So we should try to avoid that, and first step we need to identify that restriction. So next step, you need to express the function to its lowest form. Factor the numerator and denominator, then remove the common factors. Again, simplify your rational function, and by simplifying it, the factors, then if there are similar or common factors to your numerator and denominator, we can cancel it. So for the third step, we need to identify the values of the x-independent variable x that makes the numerator equals to 0. How? So your numerator, we can equate it to be equal to 0. Then get the value of your x, the independent variable x. So, and last, of course, the zeros of the rational function f are the values of the independent variable x that makes the numerator 0 but not the denominator. So, just like I said in the first step, you need to identify the restrictions because that will make the denominator equals to 0. So, for you to get the zeros, you need to equate your numerator to be equals to 0. So take a look at the two values, the zeros and the restrictions. If they are the same, so that 0 that is also a restriction can't be considered as 0 because it can make your rational function to be undefined or equals to infinity. So here are the examples for finding the zeros.
So for the zeros, let us have this example. So use the previous given, we have f of x equals to x squared plus x minus 2 all over x minus 3. So find the zeros of the rational function. So this time we're gonna get for the zeros. What are the steps in finding the zeros of this rational function rather? So we have first to identify if what are the restrictions of this function. What is this called restriction? So the restrictions are the number that will make your whole function equals to that will make your whole function to be undefined. So meaning that your denominator is equals to 0. So taking a look at the rational function, we have our denominator is x minus 3. So the restrictions here, we have x minus 3 equals to 0. So your x transpose negative 3 to the other side, we have equals to 3. So our x values or the restrictions is negative 3. So x should not be equal to negative 3. So next step, we have to express this rational function to its lowest form. Factor your numerator and denominator, then remove the common factors. So in our previous example, we have the same example. So we already know the factors. which are, its factors are negative 2 and positive 1. And your denominator, since it's already in the lowest term, so we have x plus 3. So are there any common factors? So we have none. For the third step, so in here, we're gonna identify the values that will make your numerator equals to 0. So what are the factors in our numerator? We have x minus 2. So let's just equate that to 0. So we have x minus 2 equals to 0. Transpose negative 2, we have x equals to positive 2. Next, we have x plus 1 equals to 0. So transpose positive 1 to the right side, we have negative 1. So these are the values that will make your numerator equals to 0. If we substitute it to our x, we have 2 minus 2, that is equals to 0. Then 0 times 2 plus 1, that is 3. 0 times 3, that is also 0. So that will make your whole function 0. For the fourth step, so the zeros that we've got here in the third step should be compared to the restrictions. So if there are values here that are also the same with your restrictions, so we cannot consider the zeros. Okay? So let's try. For the fourth step, we have the restrictions. X should not be equal to positive 3. And then for your zeros, we have x equals to 2 and x equals to negative 1. So are there any values in our zeros that is also the same as our restrictions? So we have none. So that means x equals to 2 and x equals to negative 1 are our zeros. So this is the restriction. So that's it for the zeros.